This episode of the Media Leader podcast was edited by our production partner Trisonic. For a full range of audio media buying and creative services, including podcast production, check out trisonic.co.uk.
We think that the current model where the ad agencies have, I don't want to be pejorative, but they've allowed themselves to get down to the stage where they've gone from being trusted advisors to large and small advertisers to now they're almost flogging inventory to anyone that will take it.
Hello, I'm Omar Oakes and welcome to another episode of the Media Leader podcast where we talk to some of the most influential and interesting people in media and advertising today. Now, the UK linear ad market business model is broken and positive disruption is needed to ensure its very survival. This is where the UK telcos come in. That's the view of my guest today, Andrew Cole, who is a board member of Liberty Global and one of the founding backers of GB News. He is the sole company director of Digital Audience Data Limited, which is a new venture charged with launching a new audience measurement and ad sales platform representing the UK's major telecoms companies, BT, Vodafone 3 and Virgin Media O2, which is of course a joint venture part owned by Liberty Global. So hello to you, Andrew. Where does the Media Leader podcast find you today?
Hello, Omar. I'm currently in my Boston condominium.
Very good. So talk about your background experience in the industry. I just mentioned in the intro that you're associated with Liberty Global, with GB News. How did you get involved in media and how do you find yourself here today?
Well, great question. My background is effectively, I am a telecom and media specialist. I've been that my whole career, initially as a strategy consultant. And over the decades, I have been able to work with many of the top senior executive CEOs of the telecom world more generally. I have since become an entrepreneur, and as part of that, I have always thrived on disruption. I mean, one of the interesting analogies I wanted to raise was I finished my strategy consulting days working on two projects which are sort of pretty incredible in hindsight. One was working with Steve Jobs on the iPhone, where my team and I worked with Steve and his team to help them enter the mobile market, initially in the US and then with negotiations with operators in the UK and other markets. And that's a good example where you see an outside industry player looks at a market and is able to sort of more accurately determine what it needs. And in this case, I think it'd be very few mobile executives that would honestly say that Apple's entry was anything but tumultuous, but also positive for the industry. And I think that it's an interesting anecdote that my work with Steve entering the market was pretty important. And then of course, all industries get into a rut. And so I would argue that this industry is similarly in a rut, and actually an outside industry player with the insights that absent many of the baggage that comes for all of us in terms of our existing industry awareness and what we're doing. Ultimately, it's important that these people come in and they can provide some value-added extra.
Yeah. So one of these things you're seeking to disrupt is audience measurement, which is very dear to the hearts of our audience. It's a huge topic in the industry. Now, you launched digital audience data. You actually incorporated it a year ago,
Yep.
But you've only been vocal about it in the last few weeks. You wrote a piece for us, which audience can find on the medialeader.co.uk. We'll have a link in the show notes. We'll get into that. But firstly, why have you been quiet for a year? What's taking so long?
Well, actually, you're familiar with UTIC. It took UTIC 4 years to get going. So we're 1 year in. I think that we took the view that it's important for the industry to start debating the presence and the benefits of operators entering the advertising market, and so we wanted to sort of begin the debate effectively.
Okay, well, let's begin it now in part. So you say you have two key focuses for DAD, as I'll call it now. Number one, you want to leverage the telcos, the operators' data to create a more modern audience currency in the UK. And secondly, you want to be a one-stop shop that sells directly to advertisers and agencies. So why do you think the market needs this?
Very good question. First of all, there's no question that industry trends are driving this. We see increasing market fragmentation, particularly around smaller channels. And and also one can argue that in a macro sense, that the linear TV industry is in a rut, and partly because of a rut created by its own doing. And so we feel that there needs to be change, fundamental change in the market, really, to both elevate broadcaster success, but also the whole industry success. So we are here as change agents, and we hope will be a very positive one for all constituents in the industry. It will mean some realignment, but fundamentally we think that is a good thing for the major participants, particularly the broadcasters.
Yeah. I mean, how do you think this initiative can overcome some of the hurdles that have stopped similar things happening in the past? I mean, in response to this launching on the story on our website, one contributor said this has been tried before years ago with an analytics business called Extract. It failed not because of any technical shortcomings, but because of the massive politics and insurmountable silo walls within the telcos. Maybe it will be different this time, he asks. Will it? How will it?
Well, actually, that commentator is right that the telecom industry, they're big Goliath companies and they're hard to get them focused. But that's our job at DAD, is to get these operators focused. And that's what we're doing. So we're bringing them along, business case, all the fundamental understanding. And if you think of it from telco's perspective, it's like an onion. At the core is the network, the stores, the fact that they have all of the customers, all of the viewers that you are looking for, they're existing mobile customers of my clients, of the operators. So there's no question that these companies are hard to point in one direction. They're like big tankers, but ultimately, once you turn them, they're hard to stop. So that's the first thing. But I would argue that actually it's the other way around. It's the advertising market that is where the politics are. I mean, my observation, I have a deep respect for the industry, deep respect for many of the participants, but I do think that there's a tendency to, this is ours, stay away. And people don't really welcome outsiders, in my view. It's hard. And so if I'm worried about anything, it is the fact that non-industry participants are coming in, hopefully with a very powerful offering, and will it be accepted? Now, I do think it will be accepted, because what we are proposing is actually not revolutionary in the sense that it's been done before. So if you look at, in Germany, for example, you look at Vodafone Germany, what we are proposing, they are pretty much doing. And actually, if you talk to them, as we have done at length, they will tell you that initially they had significant broadcaster resistance, significant resistance from the wider industry in Germany, and now they're welcomed and they're accepted, and people would, I think, generally believe that actually they're contributing to the wider advertising market. And so that's what we're hoping to do with our initiative in the UK.
And well, obviously what we've had in the UK for the last 4 decades is Barb, which has been a joint industry measurement system backed by the UK's major broadcasters. You said in your piece for us that Barb's panels are old-fashioned, crude. It's astonishing that a multi-billion-pound industry relies on such antiquated services that are very often inaccurate. Yet, I speak to a lot of people in the industry, and they still have a huge amount of deference, let's say, for Barb. They like the fact that it's a trusted industry system. They like the fact that the media owners, the broadcasters, are not marking their own homework. I mean, whether you think Barb is fit for purpose or not, how do you expect to replace it with something that isn't trusted?
Well, first of all, let me just say that I have deep respect for Barb and for the executives that run it. However, there is no question that there's a difference between facts and pliable statistics. And ultimately, what we're going to bring is we know what people are watching. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I know when Omar Oakes moves from Channel 4 to ITV, I know where you were, where you've gone, how long you've been on that. We know it. So we have sessionized data, which we aggregate across all of the operators. And so, while we will also aggregate the data from TVA, from multiple sources, we will know what's happening. We're not guessing. And ultimately, while I study statistics at university, so I understand the arguments being made about the panel and how statistically relevant it is. But there's no doubt that what we're proposing is fundamentally different, and we will show it by publishing our data next to Barb's, and it will be very clear to the world who's correct. And I can tell you that, as I mentioned in the audience, that when you have small channels and when you have such a, and you just do the extrapolation of several thousand households, and then you do it down to how many are actually watching a channel. For the long tail, for those fragmented smaller channels, Barb really does not cut the mustard. It really does not work. And so that's why we think that it's needed. We think for us it's a foundation stone upon which we can build a business that is really focused on the ad tech side. But there's no doubt that we have a competitive advantage in terms of the data that we have. That's fundamentally what it is. It's actual facts versus extrapolation.
Sure, but we still come back to the politics, don't we? So, if you speak to Barb and they'll say, well, we want second by second audience reporting, for instance, instead of the 30 seconds that you currently do. They'll say, well, we can do it. If the industry wants to pay for it, we've got these Kantar data panels, we can do it.
Yeah.
But the fact is, when the rubber hits the road, do advertisers actually want to pay for that? Isn't it going to disrupt things to such an extent that it's going to become the trading system will not be fit for purpose rather than the measurement?
We will not charge for it. So that's the other thing. So we will publish our data. Barb will have its data. We'll have ours. Advertisers will be able to see which is more accurate. And then we will, for those that use our ad tech platform, they will receive the data for free. So we will not be selling the data, but you can only access the data if you use our ad tech platform. So that is one of our strategic pricing elements. And I think it's important because there is no money in measurement because Barb acts like a non-profit. So the only way to counter that is to actually turn it into a free service.
And are you in discussion with, or have you actually appointed any third-party verification companies? Who's going to handle this data? How's it going to work in practice?
Well, Barb will aggregate the data from the operators and from the other third parties. And so, obviously we have a lot of work to do in a whole series of areas in the measurement side. It's interesting you're focused on the measurement side. I think the more sexy and interesting side is the ad tech. But anyway, but the measurement, as I say, to us is a means to an end. It's a very important thing, and so, we will be using third parties. And actually, what's interesting is since I published the article in your publication, we have received a significant interest from third parties who want to be part of our solution, as well as industry executives who want to be a part of the data organization, and also from advertisers who are encouraging us to move forward expeditiously. So I think, there's a lot to do. You mentioned some of those elements. We also need to make sure that we understand that we're very clear about the definition of our measurement criteria and so on. There's a lot to do, which we will be embracing. But again, at the moment, we are very focused on moving forward with the operators because we need to get them to actually start investing in DAD, and that is the key milestone that we're focused on.
And is this something that you want to just offer as an add-on service on behalf of the telcos, or do you have plans to start getting involved in any other joint measurement systems? We're speaking, just about the ISBA just about to launch the important beta phase of Project Origin, which is a really ambitious initiative to do cross-media measurement, not just cross-video, cross-media measurement for the whole of the UK industry. I mean, do you have plans to be part of anything like that down the line?
We've spoken to them at length, and we admire them, and we have had discussions with them. So it's very early stage, because again, from my perspective, I don't want to go down into too many alliances or too many until I know that the operators are fully on board. And as I say, they come back to the fact that we're working with them where everything's looking good, but until we get them actually signed up, then I don't want to go down too many paths. But we've had discussions with them. We've had discussions with UTIC, and UTIC and DAD will probably do an alliance together of some sort. So there's lots of.
So what probably? I mean, they still aren't fully signed up, are they? These telco operators.
No, exactly.
I mean, what probability, given all the issues we've had in the past of trying to get something like this to happen? I mean, what probability do you realistically put on this happening? Are you trying to put pressure on them publicly to sign up for this? Is what I'm asking. Well,
actually, just so we're clear, I mean, I send every 2 months an update to all of the operator CEOs that I know personally. So I know, because of those relationships, they push these down to their teams, and we are pushing forward. So I would say it's 90% that 2 of the 4 operators will launch, and I think that it's 70% that all 4 of them will launch. So as you can imagine, some of the operators have deep expertise in advertising. A good example is Virgin Media. and others have very minimal understanding. And we've come to them and they've sort of said, oh, hold on, help me understand this. So it's a huge education effort for those particular operators. So there are different stages, and we're of course trying to bring them all along to coalesce together for a result. But I think I'm very, very confident that it'll happen. I'm very confident that 2 of the 4 will start for sure.
Okay. Now, you rather courageously undermined my sexy credentials just now. You said the ad tech part of this is much more sexy. So go on. What's sexy about the ad tech part of this?
Well, it's the really exciting bit. I mean, fundamentally, we again think of Steve Jobs and think of Apple looking at the mobile market back in 2005. Okay. So as telecom look at this market, we just think it's not the linear side of the market, almost hurting themselves. We think there's this unholy alliance between the advertising agencies and the broadcasters. And it's the broadcasters that, by agreeing to this, are fundamentally depressing CPMs in our view. And so what we want to do is have an ad tech platform that will ultimately be an aggregation, a one-stop shop for advertisers for all sectors, including streaming and so on. So we'll have connections into all of the other ad tech platforms. It won't happen overnight, it won't happen at launch, but it will happen, we hope, over time. But even within the linear space, we think that, yes, we agree that reach is a sort of a superpower of the industry. But, targeting is essential. And so what we can do is bring the benefits of both such that we elevate CPMs. And we think that the current model where the ad agencies have, I don't want to be pejorative, but what they've allowed themselves to get down to the stage where they've gone from being trusted advisors to large and small advertisers to now they're almost flogging inventory to anyone that will take it. And it's not healthy for the industry. It's because it means that, I'm reflecting conversations with advertisers who are not happy. And by the way, at least and we've spoken to a lot of players, we didn't find one that was actually happy. Yeah, I know that the statistics are 1 in 10 are happy, but we couldn't find the one. And primarily because of this unholy alliance between the two. We don't think it's healthy for the broadcasters, and we think fundamentally it's bad for the ad agencies as well. We think they should get back to their knitting, which is creative and planning campaigns, executing campaigns, and not trying to just flog inventory. That's a problem for the industry, and we hope to correct that by having an ad tech platform that allows for increased dynamism, allows for advertisers, easy to use interface, AI enabled, allowing advertisers to plan campaigns across sector and to do so in a easy to do manner. And I would just say that we're trying to give them the option of reach and of targeting. For example, in an advertising pod, you'd have, say, the first ad would be targeted so that Omar's home would have one ad, Andrew Cole's home would have another. We could be next to each other, but we're optimizing CPMs because advertisers will pay for that. But at the same time, the next ad, we all get it because it's about reach. So we can add the benefits of both and really, we hope, transform the industry, but breaking this unfortunate industry structure that has emerged. And as things do, they emerged by accident, but it's ended up in a quite unhealthy place.
Yeah. Any hope for Sky to be part of this? They obviously a different kind of telco / broadcaster. They've had Sky AdSmart for 10 years now, where they've tried to leverage all the data they have about their customers into an online-offline joint system. Any prospect of having them involved in this? Or are they always going to be a competitor?
Yeah, very much so. In fact, we've had lengthy discussions with Comcast about this. And one thing we haven't discussed so far is that DAD is being encouraged by international operators to consider doing this on a global basis. In theory, every market in the world should be to have a similar structure to the one we're proposing for the UK. And many of the US operators would love to get together to do what we're suggesting here. And so fundamentally, do I think Sky will join? I do. I think that unlike the other three operators, they have more to lose theoretically. So there's a lot more, you have to be a little bit more careful about jumping into something like that, but I'm optimistic that they will at some point.
So what can we expect to happen between now and the end of the year, for example, with DAD?
Well, we, as I mentioned before, our primary focus is working with the operators to bring them to the endpoint of investment. And we have also established an alliance with Bell Canada, which we're very excited about. The primary reason for that is Bell Canada is an interesting company in the sense that it's both an operator and a broadcaster, and that they make billions of dollars of a year in advertising revenue and other things. So they have built the tech. They have a deep understanding of both houses, so to speak. And so for them to be part of that means that when we're in conversation with the operators, we're able to defer to an expert, so to speak, that can help understand what it means for the network, what it means for investment, and so on. So that's a big deal for us. So we're excited about that. We think that will turbocharge our initiative, and we are also being very much focused on the vendor selection at the same time in terms of who will be our ad tech platform vendors and so on. So there's tons to do, but the core center of the plate, so to speak, is working with the operators to bring them along.
Okay, we'll look out for that. Now, Andrew, I can't let you get away without asking you a bit about GB News, not least because there's been speculation recently that GB News could follow its rival TalkTV and go online only, perhaps after the general election, which happens in the UK. We're just speaking on the eve of the general election. Now, you have since exited, but you were one of the founding backers of GB News. Let me ask you, it launched just under 3 years ago. How do you think it's gone? GB News.
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. I just wanted to start by saying that obviously this is completely unrelated to Dad. From my perspective, as I mentioned earlier, I am an entrepreneur and I love disruption. I simply, along with my co-founder, saw a TV news market that was where virtually every channel was to the left of center, and therefore it felt like for all those of us who believe in plurality of opinion, we felt that there was a gap there, and I think that has been proven correct. I appreciate that within the TV news community, GB News is not particularly liked. I see some of the reports on that, but I think one has to just be honest. There's a large constituency of people that actually like and appreciate the output. Do I think it will go online? I don't think so. I think it will stay. It'll stay as a TV news channel. But I would say that, as I mentioned before, I have nothing to do with the channel anymore. I've sold all my stock. I'm not on the board anymore. But I wish them well. I think that they have a role to play in the industry.
Yeah, I suppose that the only link to our previous conversation, as you mentioned, in the Barb system, there are lots of channels, if we put them on the long tail, we can say that, where they get 0 rated, but they're very much not 0 rated. They're just they just don't meet the threshold of what counts as an appropriate rating. Now, having spoken to people at GB News over the years, that is a constant source of frustration when you are a new broadcaster, you're looking to build an audience, and you don't think you're getting the sufficient credit for impact. And interestingly, they talk about the comparative success of their audio products, because it's of course simulcast on audio as well as TV. Yes. I mean, we'll get into the left of centre comment you made just now, but do you think it shows how difficult it actually is to launch as a new broadcaster in 20th century UK media system today?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, again, I'm a telecom exec, and I'm my core business is actually another business altogether, which is a SaaS-based cloud AI company, which serves the operators. And if I'd known just how difficult it is to make money in TV news, I would not have started. This is a very, very difficult sector. And it's hard to make money, to be perfectly frankly, very, very difficult. So it's a challenge, and I don't think I would have started the channel had I really appreciated the complexities and difficulties involved.
Yeah, it's quite interesting you say that, because Sky News, the only, for a long time, the only commercial rival to BBC News in the UK, I don't believe has ever turned a profit. It's always been a loss-making operation. So it might not have been a total surprise of how difficult it would be to turn a profit launching a news channel in the UK today.
Well, yes, having said that, though, the guys at GB News were, remember, embracing the latest technology. So in theory, you needed less people, but they were hit by a double whammy, which was, number one, they had increased costs, because when Rupert Murdoch decided to launch his channel, they tried to poach a lot of the talent, which meant they had to increase the salaries and so on. So they had increased costs, and then they had very significantly reduced revenue because of the ad boycott, which was conducted even before the channel had broadcast 1 minute of airtime. So it was a double whammy, and so that's why they had particular challenges. But of course, more generally, as you rightly say, it's just very difficult because people don't really want to pay for news. It's hard business. It's a hard sector.
Yeah. And regarding the ad boycott, I mean, do you think it shows that the experiment has failed? I mean, whether or not one has to agree with your point about the news being left of centre in the UK, put that aside for a second. Do you think it shows that a lot of people describe it as trying to create a Fox News UK version. Do you think this shows that the experiment has failed?
Well, one never wanted to create a Fox News, that just so we're clear. It was always about a centrist, moderate right channel. It was never about becoming Fox News, and it's become that way. That's unfortunate, but that was never the intent. Because
do you think it has become that way?
Hard to say. Ironically, I don't watch a lot of TV news at the moment because I'm just so swamped with business. But I haven't seen it in a while, so I actually don't know.
Okay, fascinating. I hope to get you on the podcast again soon, Andrew, because very interesting plans, as I mentioned at the top of the conversation, measurement, as well as the future of GB News. These are big issues that our industry wants to know more about, so I hope you'll come back. Andrew Cole, thanks for coming on the Media Leader podcast.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Media Leader podcast. This episode was edited by our production partners, Trisonic. You can find and listen to all our episodes on our website at themedialeader.co.uk or wherever you get your podcasts. But just remember, please do subscribe to be notified when we release our next episode. From all of us at the Media Leader, I'm editor Omar Oakes. Our executive producer is Jack Benjamin. See you next time.